but the transition of, hey, how you got from Max Fitness and doing that to now here I am with High Five Fitness and Auburn Life Coaching.
Right, okay. So yes, I was in sales. I went through various managers at Max. As that was happening, some of them were really salesy. It didn't matter how you got the sale you want, they just wanted to sell. I oftentimes wanted to connect a little bit more with the person that was in front of me, not so much sell them a product if they didn't really think the product would change their life. With that being said, there was times when I would sell a person a personal training package and they only would agree to it if I was gonna be their trainer. That happened more and more and more, and as that happened, then I requested, it was considered a demotion, but for me it was a promotion. I wanted to become a trainer. So I switched positions, they brought somebody else in sales, I started training, and that's when I actually really started to connect with my clients. As that happened, I grew as a trainer, more and more clients, to the point I was there literally from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. with a 1 hour break from 1 p.m. to 2. My schedule was full. And then it transitioned because I realized the people were there for me, not for Max. And at that point, I decided that I didn't want my future to be dependent on a perceived performance by my supervisors. My performance is by my actual supervisors, who are my clients. My clients are my bosses. Like, they can hire me or fire me at any point. So with that being said, I decided more so that I wanted to be an entrepreneur and step away from Max. So me and another trainer at the time that was at Max started another gym called Metrics Fitness, which is still operating. We were business partners. I was at Metrics for roughly 2.5 years, and then separated from Metrics, came to the High Five. I've been here for almost 5.5 years now. And at first, when I left Metrics, I was training out at Duck Sanford Park. I did that for about 6 months, and I was really honored that my clients stuck with me, even training outside, and that really meant a lot to me. And then when I did find a place, the way I found this place is there was a woman whose dogs I was checking on, and her neighbor came outside and reintroduced himself. It was somebody I had known from years back, and he said, there is a place that's available over off the corner of Wire and Webster Road if you're looking for a space to train. And that's how I found this space. So I contacted the people who managed this property. It was available, and found equipment, and then from there everything really just took off.
That's awesome, man. And I remember you telling me the story when we were doing kind of like a pre-workup to this whole thing, right. And you were telling me the story about just the flooring and how, right. Yeah, how that happened, just completely.
So the story behind the flooring is I got in the space, and one of the first things you kind of want to fit a gym out with is flooring. It was just going to be concrete floors at first. I found a guy on Craigslist who had flooring available, but he was just north of the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area. He was north of Fort Lauderdale. So I contacted him and I asked him, I said, you have the flooring that I'm looking for? And he said, I'm closing my gym. So we were kind of testing each other out because, on Craigslist, you don't know who is, fraudulent or not. Mm-hmm. And eventually we exchanged phone numbers. So he was like, you're in Auburn, Alabama, and you can't find any flooring between there and 12 hours. And I said, I honestly cannot, and that's why I'm contacting you. And he said, I will be here tomorrow for you to pick up this flooring, but I hope you're serious. And I was like, well, I'm kind of hoping you're serious because I'm going to go rent a U-Haul when I get off the phone with you and come get this flooring. I said, so he was 12 hours from me. I told him I was leaving at midnight that night. Put me down there right at noon his time. Well, 1 technically because it's a time change. So initially, he was asking for $2,000 for the flooring, and he came way off that price if he said it since I was driving so far. So I told him, I said, look, this is all the money that I have. This is what I can do. By the time I fill up my truck, rent a U-Haul, and drive down there and drive back, I was like, can you work with this? And he said, sure. So I got off the phone, went to U-Haul, hooked up the trailer to my truck, set my alarm for 11:30 p.m., out the door by 12 midnight, headed south in Florida. At that time, a hurricane was coming up to Florida, and so all the traffic coming back the other direction was back to back to back. And I'm coming down 75, and then I got to cut across to I-95. And so he texted me, he said, "Are you on your way?" So I sent him a picture, and it's just me and like these utility trucks are the only ones southbound. And it's funny, and he was like, "I guess you really are on your way." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "That way you know, like, this isn't just some random picture I pulled off the internet." So like, because all the traffic is headed northbound to escape this hurricane. He said, "Okay." So he said he was just gonna ride the hurricane out. So I go down there, pick up the flooring, we load it up. I turn around and start heading back to Auburn. About 4 a.m., I went as far as I could go, and I was still easily quite a few hours from Auburn. So I took a nap at a rest station, woke back up, came back to Auburn, and made it back the next day. Started laying the floor. I called a buddy of mine. He came, helped me unload the truck, the U-Haul, so I could get it back. And then he went on about his way. So I started laying out the flooring. And the miraculous thing that happened is as I laid out this flooring, I didn't have to cut any of it. I didn't have to rearrange any of it. And the amazing thing to me is that, so I have a strip of turf, and it goes wall to wall without me having to modify it. I have another strip of turf that ends where the rubber meets. So again, I didn't have to modify it for the space. So I used all that the guy gave to me without having to modify it at all. And every time I tell that story, like, it gives me chills, because once I finished laying the floor, had nothing left over, didn't have to modify or cut anything because I had my tools in case I had to cut or modify. It really like was confirmation for me being in the space that I needed to be in.
Man, I love that story. That's why I wanted you to tell it, because I mean, when you told it to me, a couple weeks ago when I came up here to work out with you, and I'm like looking at the gym and I'm doing my workout, and I'm just like, it's just another way that God just kind of set his hand on it and said, "Hey, I'm confirming what I've called you to do, Chappy."
Right.
And to me, that's the heart behind this podcast for me is how do I share the stories of everyday guys that have made decisions to go, "Hey, I'm just going to do something a little bit different." You decided to build your business a little bit differently than most strength coaches, and I'm not knocking, because I'm sure there's some other strength coaches that probably do some stuff like this, but like a lot of the ones I know, I think they do it unintentionally, and you're doing it very intentionally on the other side of it, and which is what's great, because our common friend Sarah, who connected us, and definitely got to give a shout out to Sarah. She's got a podcast. I'll make sure to tag it, but that's the way she explained it. Right. That's the way she shared her journey here as well. And so it's just been really kind of cool to kind of hear your story, live it some with you, but at the same time, see it in person when you come in here and you see exactly what he was talking about when you look at the floor and how it's laid out and everything. So talk to me about some of the common obstacles, some of the things that you really see that you've been able to, like, I want to hear some wins and losses of Chappy and High Five Fitness and your clients. I want people to know that, hey, that there's wins and this is real. Like this is what makes the difference. Not only for yourself, maybe what you've overcome, but then, hey, what are some things your clients, and obviously respect their privacy.
Right.
But hey, like, let's hear.
To go back, as far as intention, when I went back to school, while I was training, a lot of times the common question is why are you not getting a master's in kinesiology? Like, why are you not getting a master's in like exercise science? And even when I told my professors when I was trying to enroll, they were asking the same thing. And I really feel and felt that wasn't my path. Like the kinesiology trainer, the exercise science, but I wanted to be more of a mental health coach as well as a physical health coach. And the psychology part, speaking about doing it different, was, I feel like, the key important part for me. As far as wins and losses for me, the most recent thing I can say and think of is the pandemic in 2020. really kind of shook what's next, because at the time when like that, for those first like 3 to 4 months, from like January to March, when there was a lot of unknown in the social distancing and the wiping down of everything like groceries and just no confined spaces, no human contact. So one of the first things that was going, or they were saying to stay away from, was gyms. And to get that kind of news, so when you work in the gym industry, your busy time of year is that January through March. So you're losing your busiest time of year because of this pandemic that's happening. And oftentimes in this industry, you build so much momentum there and carry that throughout the rest of the year. Especially living in a college town, you get New Year's resolutions, you get wedding season coming up. So there's a lot of people who get married in the summer. You got people graduating and then they want to look better than they did. You're coming off of football season, people put on their freshman 15. So in Auburn, there's an influx beyond just the normal like New Year's resolution people. And then you have this pandemic, and for me, just to be here after all of that, when I've seen so many gyms close and the people that I followed on Instagram that are that had to close their doors, I am thankful for a landlord who was flexible enough to let me stay here. Also for my clients who, so this is a beautiful thing also, this story, is even when all that was happening, I had clients of mine who said, I'm not gonna train, but I will keep paying you monthly like I have been, because I don't want you to go under, because you've impacted my life so much. People were like donating just to help me pay my rent, to keep the utilities on, and to stay in the space that I'm in now. And so for me, that was a really beautiful thing. That was a definitive win. And the clients then, my clients now, who have returned, and the new ones that I've picked up along the way, have been a real win for me. So that is the most immediate thing that I can think of as far as like my personal wins. Mm-hmm. As far as my clients, I have quite a few who have come such a long way from where they were to where they are, and they're mentally, from the amount that they had doubted themselves in their ability, that they would never be able to do X, Y, and Z. I have clients that were like, I'll never be able to walk a mile, and that are now walking 3 miles a day. There are clients, I have some an elderly population, and anybody that knows me, one of the first things you're always going to do when you come in here is you're going to get up off the floor, and it's because it's something that we neglect as people as we get older. And I have elderly people to date that thank me for that. I have a gentleman, an elderly gentleman he's in his 80s. He said he was cutting his grass and he fell in his backyard while cutting his grass. And he said if I did not teach him how to get up off the ground, he would have had to crawl around on his stomach to his front yard and then pick himself up on the back of his car, which he's done before. He said, I did that before I met you. And my doctor, the only reason I'm here is my doctor told me that I need to start working out more, and then I heard about you through him and other people. And then you taught me how to get up off the ground, and now I don't have to crawl to a chair, to a box, to a bed, to a car whenever I fall. He said that has changed my life. And he said that you never know when your fall was your last fall, because it's Alabama heat, you're cutting your grass during the summertime, and you hope you can make it, you hope somebody can find you, you hope you can reach your phone. Then I have other clients. I have one other one who fell getting out of the bathtub, in the same type of story. He had one of those stand-up tubs. He fell, and he has caregivers, but at that time his caregiver did not hear him, and he got up off the floor himself and didn't have to call her. So those have been real testaments and real wins for my clients. I have clients who have doubted themselves in a lot of capacities and their abilities to do things, even as it's related to work, a very physical, demanding environment, who now find those jobs to be easy.
I love that, man. And it's funny. I'm really glad that you told those stories. So I'm 51, so I'm starting second half, right?
Right.
And I'm really trying to take a completely different perspective on how I train, knowing that I'm moving forward, I'm going to be getting older. I'm closer to 80 and 90 than I was 20 years ago.
Right.
And so one of the goals that I have that at 90 and 95 is to have the ability to get up from the ground using a single point of contact.
Right.
So
right.
one arm.
Exactly.
And I've never really thought about it, how important that is, until I was the one, my wife and I just, we've been a caregiver for my father-in-law he recently passed, but we were his caregiver for a long time, going in and helping my mother-in-law and picking him up and moving him. And I was just like, man, like, I know I could see how he felt because of that.
Right.
And I was just like, I don't want that, not even from my kids, but also I want to be able to know that I can do that. So it's just, it's neat that your training and even what you're doing already is impacting people in that direction. So I was thinking about this question when you were telling that, and I'm trying to figure out how I want to ask it, but it's what have you seen you have clients that come in, hey man, I want to get in better shape, right? I want this, here's a picture of this guy, here's a picture of this girl, this is what I want to look like, right? And you're like, all right, great, this is the gym, that's what I do.
Right.
But let's talk about what happens really behind the scenes when you're like, hey, okay, well, we're going to work out. And then they start opening up and you start doing what it is that you do, what makes you set apart from the other people in this area that are training or life coaching and stuff like that.
Correct.
I want to hear that. Like, that's the magic stuff that you're doing,
Correct.